The night the Vampire King touched my neck, everything went dark. But the truth is, my story didn't begin in that moment. It began with humiliation. Rain poured down in cold sheets over the city of Ravenmoor, turning the cracked sidewalks into mirrors of flickering neon lights. Cars splashed muddy water as they rushed past, but no one noticed the girl standing outside the back door of a small restaurant. No one noticed me. My name is Elena Ward, and that night I had nowhere left to go. I pulled my thin jacket tighter around my shoulders as the restaurant door slammed open behind me. "Don't bother coming back tomorrow," the manager barked. His voice was loud enough for the kitchen staff to hear. A few of them laughed quietly. "You're too slow, too clumsy, and customers complain about you constantly," he continued. "Honestly, I don't know why I hired you in the first place." My fingers trembled around the plastic bag that held everything I owned. 2 shirts, a pair of worn jeans, and a photograph. That was it. "I'm sorry," I whispered. He rolled his eyes. "Save it. Just leave." The door slammed again. And just like that, I was unemployed, homeless, and completely alone. The truth was, life had never been easy for me. My mother died when I was 16. My father disappeared before I was born. After my mom passed away, the landlord threw me out of our apartment within a week. Since then, I'd been surviving however I could. Cleaning houses, working night shifts, sleeping in cheap hostels. But tonight even the hostel bed I usually rented was gone. I didn't have enough money left. The rain soaked through my shoes as I started walking. Ravenmoor at night had a strange feeling to it, like the city was holding its breath, like something ancient watched from the shadows. Everyone knew the rumors. The old legends whispered in bars and late-night diners. Vampires ruled the northern mountains beyond the city. Not the movie kind. Not the romantic kind. Real ones. Powerful. Cold. Untouchable. And at the center of it all was one name people spoke in quiet voices. The Vampire King. No one had seen him in years. But everyone feared him. My stomach twisted painfully. I hadn't eaten all day. The smell of roasted meat drifted from a nearby street market, making my mouth water. I walked past glowing stalls and laughing crowds, trying not to look at the food. A little boy accidentally bumped into me. His mother grabbed him quickly. "Watch where you're going," she snapped at me before pulling him away. I lowered my eyes. People were used to ignoring girls like me. Poor girls. Invisible girls. That's when I heard it. A quiet whimper. It came from the dark alley beside the market. I hesitated. Most people would have kept walking. But something inside me refused. Slowly I stepped into the alley. "Hello," I called softly. Another whimper answered. Behind a stack of crates, I found a small boy curled on the ground. He couldn't have been more than 6 years old. His clothes were expensive but torn, and his silver hair clung to his pale face from the rain. He looked different, almost unreal. "Hey," I said gently, kneeling beside him. "Are you okay?" He flinched when I reached out. "It's okay," I whispered. "I won't hurt you." His eyes opened, and I froze. They were deep crimson. Not brown. Not hazel. Crimson. My heart skipped. "Vampire." The boy's lips trembled. "They're coming," he whispered weakly. "Who?" I asked. But before he could answer, footsteps echoed at the entrance of the alley. Heavy. Deliberate. Dangerous. 3 men stepped into the dim light. They wore dark coats and carried silver blades. Hunters. Even someone like me knew what that meant. Their leader smiled coldly when he saw the boy. Well, he said. "Looks like the little prince tried to run." My blood turned cold. "Prince?" The boy clutched my sleeve weakly. "Please," he whispered. "Don't let them take me." I swallowed hard. I was just a human girl. Poor. Powerless. Completely defenseless. But when I looked at his frightened face, something inside me refused to move aside. I stood up slowly and stepped in front of him. "You can't have him," I said. The men burst out laughing. "And who exactly are you supposed to be?" one of them mocked. "Just someone who won't let you hurt a child." The leader's smile disappeared. "You really should walk away," he warned. "I can't," I replied quietly. For a moment the alley fell silent. Then he raised his blade. "Your funeral." The attack happened fast. One hunter grabbed my arm and threw me against the wall. Pain exploded through my shoulder. Another man reached for the boy. "Stop," I shouted. I pushed forward, trying to block him again. But I was no match for them. The hunter shoved me hard. My head struck the brick wall. Stars filled my vision. The world spun. The boy screamed. And then, the air changed. A strange cold wind rushed through the alley. The hunters suddenly froze. Fear spread across their faces. One of them whispered a single word. No. Heavy footsteps echoed behind them. Slow. Powerful. Ancient. A tall figure emerged from the shadows at the end of the alley. The darkness seemed to bend around him. His presence was overwhelming, terrifying. And when the hunters saw his face, they dropped their weapons instantly. King, one of them stammered. My heart stopped. The Vampire King. He was even more terrifying than the stories. Tall, broad-shouldered, eyes glowing like burning gold in the darkness. His black coat moved slightly in the wind as he stepped forward. The alley felt suddenly too small for his power. His gaze shifted and landed on me. For a moment, the entire world seemed to go silent. His expression was unreadable. Then his eyes moved to the small boy behind me. My son, he said quietly. The boy weakly reached toward him. Father? The Vampire King's jaw tightened. He turned toward the hunters. What happened next was so fast I barely saw it. A blur of movement. A scream. Then silence. The hunters were gone. Just gone. Like they had never existed. My legs trembled. I could barely breathe. The Vampire King walked toward us slowly. Every instinct in my body told me to run. But I couldn't move. He stopped in front of me. Up close, he looked even more unreal. Dangerous. Powerful. Ancient. His golden eyes studied my face carefully. You protected him, he said. His voice was deep, calm, but filled with power. I tried, I whispered. The boy clung to my arm again. She saved me, he told his father. For a long moment, the Vampire King said nothing. Then something unexpected happened. He reached out. His cold fingers brushed the side of my neck. A strange warmth spread through my body. My heartbeat slowed. My vision blurred. Interesting, he murmured. The last thing I saw before darkness swallowed me was the Vampire King staring at me like I was a mystery he intended to solve. And then everything went dark. Darkness wrapped around me like deep water. For a long time I couldn't feel my body. No sound. No light. Just a strange floating silence. Then slowly, my senses returned. First came warmth. Soft fabric under my fingers. Then the faint smell of something unfamiliar, clean air mixed with old stone and something metallic. Blood. My eyes opened suddenly. A massive ceiling stretched high above me, decorated with dark silver carvings that reflected soft candlelight. Velvet curtains framed tall windows that looked out over endless mountains. For a moment I thought I was dreaming. This wasn't a hostel. This wasn't the street. This was a palace. A very old one. I sat up quickly, panic rushing through my chest. Where am I? My voice echoed in the enormous room. The bed beneath me was softer than anything I had ever touched. The blankets were thick and warm, clearly made from expensive fabric. I looked down at myself. My soaked clothes were gone. Instead, I wore a simple white dress made of soft cotton. Someone had cleaned me. My heart began racing. Hello? I called nervously. The door opened instantly. A tall woman stepped inside. Her pale skin and silver eyes immediately told me she wasn't human. A vampire. But unlike the terrifying stories I had heard, she didn't look cruel. She looked calm. Respectful. You're awake, she said gently. I scooted back slightly on the bed. Where am I? You are in Blackthorn Palace, residence of His Majesty. My throat tightened. His Majesty. The Vampire King. My stomach dropped. Last night rushed back into my mind. The alley. The hunters. The silver-haired boy. And then him. The powerful figure who had appeared like a shadow made of steel and darkness. The moment his fingers touched my neck. The strange warmth. Then nothing. Am I a prisoner? I asked quietly. The woman blinked, almost amused. No. Then why am I here? Before she could answer, another voice spoke from the doorway. Because you protected my son. My heart froze. The woman immediately bowed deeply and stepped aside. The Vampire King stood at the entrance of the room. Even in daylight, his presence felt overwhelming. He wore a dark tailored coat that looked almost royal, and his long black hair framed a face that looked both beautiful and terrifying. Power radiated from him like invisible fire. Those golden eyes focused on me again. Cold, sure, curious. Every instinct in my body screamed danger. But strangely, I wasn't afraid of him. Not completely. He walked slowly toward the bed. Each step silent. Controlled. You should rest, he said calmly. I'm fine, I replied quickly, even though that wasn't true. My head still felt light. He studied me carefully. You lost consciousness for nearly 12 hours. 12 hours. I gasped. Yes. That's impossible. You struck your head against stone, he said simply. Humans rarely recover so quickly. I frowned. What do you mean? Instead of answering, he looked toward the vampire woman. Leave us. She bowed again. Yes, Your Majesty. The door closed quietly behind her. Now we were alone. My heartbeat sped up. The vampire king stopped a few feet away from the bed. You defended a vampire child, he said. Yes. You knew what he was. Yes. Yet you still stepped in front of armed hunters. I nodded slowly. He was scared. The king's expression didn't change, but something flickered in his eyes. Most humans would have run. I guess I'm not most humans. Silence filled the room. Then his gaze drifted slowly toward my neck. The exact place he had touched the night before. When I placed my hand here, he said quietly, you should have died. My breath caught. What? His golden eyes lifted to meet mine. My touch carries ancient energy. Human bodies cannot withstand it. A chill ran through me. But you didn't die. I swallowed nervously. So, that's good, right? He didn't smile. In thousands of years, only 2 humans have survived it. My heart pounded. 2. Yes. And the last one died nearly 400 years ago. My mind struggled to process that. I don't understand. Neither did he. I could see it in his eyes. The vampire king leaned slightly closer. Tell me something, Elena Ward. My stomach dropped. You know my name? I know everything about the girl who saved my son. That shouldn't have surprised me. Kings always had information. Still, hearing it sent a strange shiver through my chest. Have you ever experienced unusual abilities? He asked. Like what? Visions, healing, strange dreams, speaking languages you've never learned. I shook my head quickly. No. His eyes narrowed slightly. You're certain? I'm just normal. The word sounded smaller than usual inside this massive palace. Normal. Forgettable. That's what I had always been. The king looked unconvinced. Just then, the door burst open. The small silver-haired boy from the alley ran inside. Father. He jumped straight onto the bed beside me. You woke up, he said happily. I smiled without thinking. Hey, little guy. The king's voice immediately turned sharp. Adrian. The boy froze. You were supposed to be resting. But I wanted to see her, Adrian insisted. He turned back toward me. You saved me. His small hand grabbed mine. Thank you. Warmth spread through my chest. You're welcome. The king watched the interaction silently. Something about his expression shifted. Almost thoughtful. Adrian looked up at him. Can she stay? No. The answer came instantly. The boy's face fell. But she is human, the king continued calmly. She cannot remain in a vampire palace. I felt a strange sting in my chest. Of course. Why would someone like him allow someone like me to stay? But before I could say anything, Adrian suddenly frowned. Then he said something strange. Something that made the entire room go still. She smells like the old stories. The king's head snapped toward him. What did you say? Adrian looked confused. Her blood, he said. It smells like the moonbound line. The vampire king went completely still. For the first time since I met him. Real shock appeared in his eyes. Slowly he turned back toward me, studying me like I had just become the most important mystery in the world. Impossible, he whispered. My heart started racing again. What's impossible? His voice dropped lower, darker. If what my son senses is true. He paused, then said the words that would change my life forever. You are not an ordinary human girl, Elena Ward. And in that moment, I realized my story was only beginning. The room fell completely silent after Adrian's words. Even the air felt heavier. I looked from the small boy to the vampire king, confused by the sudden tension. Moon, what? I asked. But neither of them answered immediately. The king's golden eyes were locked on me with an intensity that made my chest tighten. He looked like a man who had just discovered something impossible. Adrian, he said slowly, repeat what you said. The boy tilted his head slightly. She smells like the old stories, he said again. Like the moonbound blood. I blinked. That doesn't make any sense, I said quickly. I'm just human. The vampire king finally spoke again, his voice colder than before. Leave us, Adrian. The boy frowned. But now. Reluctantly, Adrian slid off the bed. Before leaving, he looked back at me. "I like you," he said quietly. Then he ran out of the room. The door closed, and suddenly it was just the two of us again. The Vampire King walked slowly toward the tall window, staring out at the mountain landscape beyond the palace walls. For a moment he didn't say anything. Finally he spoke. "Do you know anything about your family history?" I shook my head. "My mother died when I was 16, I said softly. "And I never knew my father." "Your grandparents?" "I never met them." His jaw tightened slightly. "And your mother never told you anything unusual?" "Like what?" "Legends, old traditions, strange abilities." I let out a nervous laugh. "No." The king turned back toward me. His expression was serious. "Then either your mother kept a very dangerous secret, or she didn't know it herself." My stomach twisted. "Know what?" He walked closer again, stopping a few feet away from the bed. "Thousands of years ago," he began, "before humans built cities, before the world looked like it does now, there existed a rare bloodline known as the Moonbound." I listened carefully. "They were human," he continued, "but their blood carried a unique connection to supernatural energy." "Like magic?" I asked. "In a sense." His golden eyes studied my face. "Their presence could calm vampires. Their blood could heal certain ancient wounds. And most importantly," he paused, "they could survive contact with royal vampire power." My heartbeat sped up. "Which means?" He nodded once. "You surviving my touch should be impossible." "But I did." "Yes." Silence stretched between us. My mind struggled to process everything he was saying. "So you think I'm part of this moonbound thing?" "I don't think," he replied calmly. "I'm starting to suspect. But I don't have powers. Not yet." The way he said it sent a chill through me. "Wait, what does that mean?" Before he could answer, the doors suddenly opened again. This time several vampires entered the room. Unlike the woman from earlier, these vampires wore dark armor. Guards. And behind them stood an older vampire with long silver hair and piercing blue eyes. The moment he saw me, his expression turned sharp. "So it's true," he said quietly. The Vampire King didn't look pleased. "Why are you here, Valerian?" The older vampire bowed slightly. "Forgive the interruption, Your Majesty, but the palace guards reported something unusual." "What?" Valerian's eyes moved toward me. "The girl?" My stomach tightened. "What about me?" Valerian stepped closer, studying me carefully. "Her scent is spreading through the palace." "That happens when a human enters a vampire domain," the king replied calmly. Valerian shook his head. "No." He leaned slightly closer to me. "This scent is different." I shifted uncomfortably. "What do you mean?" His blue eyes narrowed. "It smells like ancient blood." The king's expression darkened slightly. "That is exactly what we were discussing." Valerian's eyes widened. "You believe she's—" "Possibly." The older vampire looked back at me again, this time with a mixture of curiosity and concern. "If she truly carries moonbound blood." He paused. "Then the situation is more dangerous than we thought." "Dangerous?" I asked. "Yes." My voice grew uneasy. "For who?" Valerian didn't hesitate. "For you." A chill ran through me. "Why?" The king answered this time. "Because if you truly possess that bloodline." His golden eyes hardened. "Every vampire faction in the world will want you." My heart dropped. "Want me for what?" Valerian spoke quietly. "Control." The word hung heavily in the air. "The moonbound bloodline disappeared centuries ago," he explained. "Many believed it was extinct. And if people find out I exist?" I asked nervously. "Then powerful creatures will hunt you." My hands tightened around the blanket. "That's not funny." "No one is joking." The king walked toward the door slowly, thinking. "If word spreads beyond these walls," he said, "she will never be safe again." Valerian nodded. "The Shadow clans would pay a fortune for her. And the Crimson Council would likely declare war over her." My stomach twisted harder. I didn't ask for any of this. The Vampire King looked back at me. "No one ever does." I swallowed nervously. "So what happens now?" For a moment the king didn't answer. Then he said something that shocked everyone in the room. "Now she stays here." Valerian blinked. "Your Majesty." "If she leaves the palace," the king continued calmly, "she will be captured within days. But keeping a human inside Blackthorn Palace is my decision." Silence followed. Then Valerian bowed slowly. "As you wish." My mind was still spinning. You're serious? I asked the king. Yes. You're going to keep me here? For your protection. That sounds a lot like being a prisoner. His expression softened slightly. You saved my son's life. Yes. And in doing so, he said quietly, you unknowingly stepped into a world that will never let you walk away. I stared at him. Fear mixed with confusion. So what am I supposed to do now? The Vampire King looked directly into my eyes. And for the first time, his voice sounded almost gentle. You learned to survive in my world. But neither of us knew yet that the greatest danger wasn't outside the palace. It was the ancient power slowly waking up inside me. Life inside Blackthorn Palace was nothing like the world I had known. Everything felt ancient. The halls were enormous, built from dark stone that seemed older than the mountains themselves. Tall silver torches lined the corridors, their flames glowing softly even during the day. And everywhere I went, vampires watched me. Some with curiosity, some with suspicion, and a few with open hostility. After the meeting in the royal chamber, the Vampire King had made his decision clear. I wasn't allowed to leave the palace. For your protection, he had said. But the truth was, it still felt like a cage. 2 guards stood outside my room at all times. Every meal was brought to me. And the entire palace seemed to know about me within hours. The human girl with ancient blood. I sat by the window of my room staring down at the massive courtyard below. Vampire warriors trained with swords and spears, moving faster than human eyes could follow. Their strength was terrifying. And somehow, I was living among them. A knock came at the door. Before I could answer, it opened. Adrian walked in holding something behind his back. You're not supposed to come alone, I said. He grinned. I'm not alone. 2 guards stood in the hallway behind him, clearly exhausted from trying to keep up with the energetic vampire child. I smiled slightly. Fair enough. Adrian walked over and held out what he had been hiding. A small tray. On it sat a cup of tea and a warm pastry. I asked the kitchen to make it, he said proudly. My heart softened. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did, he insisted. You saved me. I took the cup carefully. Thank you. Adrian climbed onto the chair beside me. You look sad, he said. I'm not sad, I replied quietly. Just thinking. About leaving? I didn't answer. The truth was obvious. Adrian's expression became serious. You can't leave, he said. I know. He lowered his voice. There are monsters outside the palace. I raised an eyebrow. You're a vampire. Yes, he said matter-of-factly. But some vampires are worse than others. Before I could ask what he meant, a loud shout echoed from the courtyard below. Adrian jumped to the window. Training accident, he said. Curious, I stood and looked down as well. Several vampire warriors surrounded one of their own who had collapsed onto the ground. Blood spread across the stone floor beneath him. The wound on his side looked deep. Even from this distance I could see the panic spreading among the soldiers. Why aren't they helping him? I asked. Adrian frowned. They are. But he's bleeding. Vampires heal slowly from silver weapons, Adrian explained. That spear probably had silver in it. The injured warrior groaned in pain. Something inside my chest twisted. Without thinking, I turned toward the door. Wait, Adrian said. But I was already moving. The palace guards looked surprised when I suddenly appeared in the courtyard. Miss, you shouldn't be here, one of them said quickly. But I ignored him and pushed through the small crowd of warriors. The injured vampire lay on the ground, breathing heavily. His armor had been removed, revealing the deep cut along his ribs. Blood covered his side. Move, I said instinctively. The surrounding vampires stared at me in disbelief. She's human, one of them whispered. She shouldn't even be near this. But I knelt beside the wounded warrior anyway. Hold still, I said softly. He looked confused. Why, are you helping me? I didn't answer. Instead, I placed my hand gently over the wound. Immediately, something strange happened. A warm pulse spread through my palm. At first I thought it was my imagination. But then the warmth grew stronger. Brighter. Almost like light was moving beneath my skin. The vampire warrior stepped back in shock. What is that? Someone whispered. The injured warrior gasped suddenly. His body tensed. The bleeding slowed. Then stopped. Right before everyone's eyes, the deep wound began closing. The torn skin slowly sealed itself as if invisible hands were stitching it together. I stared down at my hands, stunned. I didn't do that, I whispered. But the courtyard had already fallen silent. Every vampire there was staring at me. Then I heard a familiar voice behind the crowd. Step aside. The warriors immediately moved. The vampire king walked forward. His golden eyes were fixed on my glowing hand. The moment he reached me, the warmth vanished. The light disappeared. And the wound was gone. The injured warrior slowly sat up, touching his side in disbelief. It's healed, he breathed. Shock rippled through the courtyard. Valerian stepped forward as well, his expression stunned. It's true, he said quietly. The moonbound power. I stood up slowly, my heart racing. I didn't mean to do that. The vampire king didn't speak immediately. Instead, he looked at the healed warrior. Return to your duties. Yes, your majesty. The warrior bowed deeply before leaving. Then the king turned back toward me. His expression was unreadable again. Come with me. Minutes later, we stood alone inside a quiet chamber. The king closed the heavy door behind us. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he walked closer. You felt it, didn't you? He asked. The warmth? Yes. I nodded slowly. I didn't control it. You don't know how yet. My chest tightened. So Valerian was right. Yes. You really think I have this moonbound blood? The king stepped closer. Now only a few feet separated us. I don't think, he said quietly. I know. My voice trembled slightly. What does that mean for me? His golden eyes softened in a way I hadn't seen before. It means you're far more important than you realize. Before I could respond, the palace alarm suddenly blared. A deep horn echoed through the halls. Valerian's voice shouted from outside. Your Majesty. Riders approaching the eastern gate. The king's expression instantly hardened. Who? Valerian's voice carried urgency. Scouts from the Shadow clan. My stomach dropped. They shouldn't know about her, the king said sharply. That's what we thought, Valerian replied. Silence filled the room for one dangerous moment. Then the vampire king looked back at me. And the protective intensity in his eyes had changed. This time, it was personal. It seems, he said slowly, our enemies already know you exist. And the war for my blood had just begun. The palace alarms continued to echo through the massive halls of Blackthorn Palace. The deep sound of the warning horns vibrated through the stone walls like distant thunder. Every vampire in the palace immediately moved into action. Warriors rushed through the corridors. Guards sealed the gates. Messengers ran between towers delivering orders. I had never seen anything like it. The calm, mysterious palace I had been living in for the past day had suddenly transformed into a fortress preparing for war. And somehow, I was the reason for it. I stood in the chamber beside the vampire king, my heart racing. Are they coming for me? I asked quietly. The king didn't hesitate. Yes. The honesty in his voice sent a chill through my chest. Valerian entered the room quickly, his expression serious. The Shadow Clan scouts are waiting outside the eastern gate, he reported. They claim they want to negotiate. The king's golden eyes narrowed. They never negotiate. That's what I thought. Valerian glanced toward me. They know about the girl. My stomach tightened again. How is that possible? I asked. No one outside the palace should know. Valerian answered calmly. Power attracts attention. The vampire king folded his arms. The moment she used moonbound healing in the courtyard, the energy likely spread beyond the palace walls. My voice felt small. So they felt it? Yes. The king turned toward the window overlooking the massive courtyard below. Dark clouds were gathering over the mountains. Shadow Clan vampires are hunters, he said. They collect rare supernatural bloodlines. Valerian nodded grimly. If they capture her, they will experiment on her, or sell her to the Crimson Council. My stomach twisted. Sell me? The king turned back toward me. That will not happen. His voice was calm. But there was something fierce beneath it. Before I could respond, Adrian suddenly rushed into the room again. Father. 2 guards ran in after him, clearly trying and failing to stop the energetic young prince. I told you he would sneak past them, Adrian said proudly. The king sighed quietly. Adrian. You're not sending her away, are you? The boy asked quickly. No. Good. Adrian ran over and stood beside me. They can't have her, he said firmly. Valerian looked amused. Your son has already chosen his side. The king's gaze softened slightly. Then he looked back toward the door. Prepare the throne hall, he ordered. Valerian raised an eyebrow. You intend to meet them? Yes. That could be dangerous. They would not dare attack inside my domain. Valerian nodded slowly. As you wish, your majesty. He left immediately. The king then turned toward me. You will stay here. I shook my head. No. His expression hardened slightly. This is not a discussion. Yes, it is. The words slipped out before I could stop them. The room fell silent. Even Adrian looked surprised. You're risking your life because of me? I continued. I deserve to know what's happening. The king studied my face for a long moment. You are far braver than most humans, he said quietly. That doesn't mean you should stand in the middle of a vampire negotiation. I crossed my arms. I've already stood in the middle of hunters with silver blades. Adrian nodded enthusiastically. She's right. The king looked mildly annoyed. Adrian. Sorry. Silence stretched between us again. Finally the king spoke. You will stand beside me, he said. But you will not speak unless I allow it. My heart skipped. Really? Yes. But you stay behind me at all times. I nodded quickly. Deal. The throne hall of Blackthorn Palace looked even more intimidating than the rest of the castle. Massive stone pillars stretched up toward a dark vaulted ceiling. Silver chandeliers cast cold light across the black marble floor. At the far end of the hall stood the throne. It wasn't made of gold. It was carved from obsidian. Sure. Dark. Ancient. The vampire king sat upon it like he had ruled there for centuries. Because he had. I stood beside him, slightly behind the throne as he instructed. Adrian sat on a smaller chair nearby, trying to look important. Valerian stood near the entrance with several elite guards. Then the doors opened. 3 vampires entered. They looked different from the ones in the palace. Their clothing was darker. Their expressions colder. The leader stepped forward with a smug smile. Your Majesty, he said with a mocking bow. The king didn't move. State your business. The Shadow Clan vampire's eyes slowly drifted across the room. Then they landed on me. A greedy smile spread across his face. There she is. My heart pounded. The king's voice became dangerously quiet. You are speaking to your king. The vampire shrugged slightly. Of course. He stepped closer. We felt the moonbound energy last night. Valerian's expression hardened. You are trespassing. Not yet. The vampire's eyes remained locked on me. Her blood is extremely valuable. My stomach twisted with anger. I'm not an object, I muttered. The vampire laughed. To us, you are. The king stood up slowly from the throne. The entire room seemed to freeze. You will choose your next words carefully, he said. The Shadow Clan leader didn't look intimidated. Very well, he replied. We are prepared to make an offer. No. The answer came instantly. You haven't heard the offer yet. I don't need to. The vampire smirked. 3 ancient relics. 10 territories. And 100 elite warriors. Valerian's eyes widened slightly. It was a massive offer. But the king didn't hesitate. No. The vampire sighed dramatically. You are refusing a very generous trade. The king's golden eyes burned with quiet fury. She is not a trade. The Shadow Clan leader tilted his head. You're unusually protective of a human. Something in the room shifted. Then the king spoke again. His voice was calm. But it carried absolute authority. She is under my protection. Silence fell across the hall. The Shadow Clan vampires exchanged glances. Then their leader chuckled. Very interesting. He looked directly at me again. This won't end here. Then he turned back toward the king. You may protect her today. But eventually... His smile grew darker. Someone will take her. The king's eyes flashed. That someone will die. The threat hung in the air like a blade. The Shadow Clan vampires slowly backed toward the door. Before leaving, their leader gave me one final look. The kind of look a hunter gives prey. Then they disappeared into the night. The throne hall fell silent again. My heart was still pounding. I looked at the vampire king. You turned down all of that, for me? He looked at me calmly. You saved my son. That's not the only reason, Adrian said quietly. The king glanced at him. Adrian. But the boy only smiled. And for the first time, I realized something surprising. The powerful, feared vampire king wasn't just protecting me out of duty anymore. Something deeper had begun to grow between us. Something neither of us fully understood yet. And the world outside the palace was already preparing to take it away. The Shadow Clan left the palace that night. But the tension they brought with them didn't disappear. It lingered in the halls of Blackthorn Palace like a storm waiting to break. Guards doubled their patrols. Messengers moved constantly between towers. and whispers spread quickly among the vampires. The moonbound girl had been found. I stood alone on the balcony outside my room, staring out at the dark mountains surrounding the palace. The cold night wind brushed against my face. Just a few days ago, my biggest worry had been paying rent and surviving another humiliating shift at work. Now powerful supernatural clans were offering armies to buy me. It felt unreal. Footsteps approached behind me. I didn't have to turn around to know who it was. "You shouldn't be outside alone," the Vampire King said quietly. I looked over my shoulder. "You have guards everywhere. That doesn't mean you are safe." He stepped onto the balcony beside me. The moonlight reflected in his golden eyes. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally I sighed. "Your life was easier before I showed up." "That is not true." I raised an eyebrow. "You're dealing with enemy clans and palace chaos because of me." "That chaos already existed," he replied calmly. "You simply revealed it." I leaned against the railing. "You could still send me away." The moment the words left my mouth, the air between us changed. His expression hardened instantly. "No." The single word carried so much authority that I almost stepped back. "I was just saying." "You will not leave this palace unprotected," he interrupted. His voice was calm again, but the message was clear. "I don't belong in your world," I said softly. His gaze softened slightly. "Neither did the moonbound bloodline." "What do you mean?" He leaned against the balcony railing beside me. "For centuries, vampires and humans lived in fear of each other." I nodded. "That part one no. But the moonbound were different," he continued. "They stood between both worlds. Like peacekeepers?" "In a way." His golden eyes studied the moon above us. They reminded both sides that power means nothing without compassion. I swallowed slowly. "My mom used to say something like that." The king looked back at me. "She sounds wise." She was. A quiet sadness passed through me. She worked 2 jobs just to keep us fed. She must have been strong. She was the strongest person I ever knew. Silence settled again. Then the king spoke. "You remind me of her." I blinked. "Of my mom?" "Yes." The unexpected compliment warmed my chest. But before I could respond, a sudden explosion echoed from the far side of the palace. The ground shook violently. Alarms blared again. The king's expression instantly turned deadly serious. "Stay here." But I was already moving. "What's happening?" "An attack." My heart raced. "From the Shadow Clan?" "Most likely." We rushed down the corridor together as chaos spread through the palace. Guards ran toward the eastern towers. Smoke rose into the sky outside. By the time we reached the courtyard, the battle had already begun. Dozens of Shadow Clan vampires had breached the outer wall. Black-clad warriors clashed with the palace guards in a storm of steel and supernatural speed. It looked like something out of a nightmare. Adrian stood near Valerian at the center of the courtyard, surrounded by guards. The moment he saw me, he shouted, "Elena!" A Shadow Clan warrior suddenly broke through the fighting line. His eyes locked onto me. "The moonbound girl," he yelled. Several others turned instantly. My stomach dropped. They rushed toward me. The king stepped forward immediately, placing himself between us. "No one touches her." The words were quiet, but deadly. The attackers laughed. "There are too many of us, your majesty." The king's golden eyes burned with ancient power. "Then you will all die." The battle exploded around us. The Vampire King moved faster than anything I had ever seen. One attacker flew across the courtyard. Another crashed into a pillar. But more kept coming. 5, 10. Too many. One of them slipped past the king's defense and lunged toward me with a silver blade. I froze. The blade swung toward my chest. And then, something inside me burst awake. A wave of brilliant silver light exploded from my body. The entire courtyard froze. The attacking vampire screamed as the light struck him, throwing him backward like a storm. The glow spread across the courtyard like moonlight spilling across water. Every vampire felt it. Even the fighting stopped. Valerian stared in disbelief. The full moonbound power. I looked down at my hands. They were glowing. The warmth was stronger than before. But this time it wasn't just healing. It felt like protection. The remaining Shadow Clan vampires backed away nervously. Their leader stared at me with wide eyes. "She's awakened." The Vampire King slowly stepped beside me. For the first time since I met him. He smiled. Not cold. Not distant. But proud. The Shadow Clan leader hissed, "This isn't over." Then he signaled retreat. Within seconds, the attackers vanished into the forest beyond the walls. The courtyard fell silent again. Every vampire present turned toward me. Whispers spread quickly. The moonbound. The ancient protector. The lost bloodline. I suddenly felt overwhelmed. I didn't mean to. The king gently took my glowing hand. His touch was warm this time. Not deadly. You did exactly what you were meant to do. The glow slowly faded from my skin. I looked up at him. What happens now? He looked across the courtyard at the watching vampires. Then back at me. His voice carried across the entire palace. Now the world will know something important. Everyone fell silent. The vampire king lifted my hand slightly. This woman is under my protection. Then he said the words that shocked the entire palace. And one day, his golden eyes met mine. She will rule beside me. Gasps echoed across the courtyard. My heart nearly stopped. Wait, what? But the king only smiled slightly. And for the first time since I met him, the terrifying vampire king of Blackthorn Palace looked less like a ruler, and more like a man who had finally found something worth protecting forever. Because sometimes, the weakest person in the room becomes the strongest light in the darkness. And sometimes, a human girl becomes the queen no one expected.